Hey there, YouTube. I'm Ikitsu. This is the Ikitsu Times. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to a little bit of Sins of Solar Empire 2. So, it's been a while. I haven't done one of these in a little bit because I was on vacation and stuff like that, but also because I don't really know how to tackle this one. I suspect it's actually ludicrously strong, and that it is kind of unreasonable, actually. But I think there's probably going to be someone who knows like what its Achilles heel is. I feel very strongly that the probably best way to deal with this, if you're playing as Advent, would be to nullify its MP reserves and then just focus fire down very, very quickly, which I think you can do if it's not capable of casting. This is one that's got quite good defensive statistics, but not amazing defensive statistics if it cannot cast its abilities. But if it is capable of casting its abilities, it is tremendously powerful. So this is the Titan for the Visari Alliance. I don't know the lore reason for them to have such a monstrous Titan compared to the other factions. I do know why the Kultorask is so good at running and is capable of being like the mobile rulership and stuff like that, because the Visari Exodus are about sort of running and stuff like that. I don't really know exactly what the Kultorask is about. Um, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. Anyway, let's take a look at stats here. It's got 750 durability. It's got 7,140 shield points, 3,360 armor points, 12,045 hull points, and then it's got 445 antimatter. For hidden statistics, we're looking at 90 armor strength, which is a little bit low, and a maximum speed of 600, which is actually pretty fast. We got 2 squadrons of strikecraft. And then for weapons, we've got one heavy phase missile that deals 40 damage per second at 600 pierce, 2 heavy phase missiles that deal 20 damage per second each at 600 pierce for a total of 40 damage per second. You've got 16 heavy wave cannons at 12 damage per second with 300 pierce for a total of 196, I believe. I've got this on the wiki opened up right now, 192. And then you've got the 16 PD pulse guns, 6 damage per second. That's the 96 damage per second. Then you've got 8 heavy beams at 10 damage per second for a total of 80 damage per second at 500 pierce. So all of these weapons together, they don't have the best focus fire. They've actually kind of got this really interesting thing going on here. So up at the front here, we've got the 8 of our beams. They're on the outside there. We've got 8 heavy waves here, and you can kind of see them over here. These are the point defense guns. We've got 8 of them over there. So we got half of our point defense, half of our wave, all of our beams up here. And then if we look really closely, we can see these are the heavy missile launchers that are that singular heavy missile launcher at the front there, 40 damage per second. On the back, we've got these 2 missile launcher groups over here. We've got the 8 heavy waves here, and then we got the 8 point defense here. Now, the side damage from this thing is actually quite considerable, because you're going to get like a significant chunk of these point defenses, missiles, and wave guns that are capable of firing to the side. You're also going to get a few of the other weapons from the front that are capable of firing broadside depending on the angle. So this thing's actually got pretty good damage to the sides, but its majority damage is really to the front. It's just that splitting a lot of it off to the rear there. For additional weapons that you're capable of picking up through upgrades, you've got the access to the Kultorask hangar expansion. I would not personally ever take that on this one. It gives you 8 additional squadrons. Not really worth it. The Gravity Pulse Enhancer and the Enhanced Nano Emitters are not really weapons. They're upgrades to your abilities. You got access to the Kultorask Phase Missile Launchers. This is just additional missile launchers that are sort of similar to the ones you've already got. 240 damage per second, 600 pierce. This is tremendous damage. That's really, really strong. And then you've got access to the Kultorask phase cannon. So that's all capable of doing additional damage that's going to take out capitals, the command ships, and stuff like that, and even put a good dent into other Titans or even star bases. So the firepower on this thing is actually really considerable. It's capable of doing quite a lot of damage in just one-on-one gunfights. However, it doesn't really have very good improvements, and it doesn't really have the best improvement paths through items either. Still, its base damage values are so high, and what it wants to get is so different from that it doesn't really matter necessarily that you're only going to get a couple of those sort of upgrades there. For abilities, you're looking at Nano Leech. This is probably what makes this thing really powerful, and it's like kind of actually necessary for some of its other abilities to function. So you're almost always going to need to take Nano Leech, and you're always going to want to have Nano Leech because of how powerful it is. So it has a cooldown of 60 seconds. That's steady. It's got an antimatter cost of 120, scaling down to I believe 180, or sorry, to 80. And what it does is it does 12 damage per second to enemy hull/armor. Seems to bypass shields, as far as I've been able to tell. That's what it does. It removes antimatter at a rate of 1.2 per second. These scale to 2436 for the damage. then the antimatter scales up to 3.6 at maximum level. And what happens is this also restores hull and armor at 3 per second, 6 per second, 9 per second, and antimatter at 0.3, 0.6, 0.9 per second. Duration of 24 seconds, radius of 6,600. The reason Nano Leech is so scary is that these numbers are very, very deceptive. It sort of says this in the tooltip if you're looking carefully, but the Nano Leech doesn't give you those regeneration values. It gives you those regeneration values per every ship that you're leeching from. So if there's 100 ships and you've got this maxed out, you're restoring 900 hull or armor per second. You're restoring 90 of the antimatter per second. It gets to absolutely kind of crazy sort of amounts there, which is why I think that if you can find a cooldown reduction item to put on this thing, or you're using phase resonance to get the cooldowns down, this thing is really, really scary. This is actually probably one of the most overbearingly powerful abilities in the game, just because it's capable of bringing back its like full armor complement really, really effectively, while still doing a little bit of damage to the opponent. More importantly, it suppresses enemy antimatter, which is capable of making it so that enemies just cannot cast abilities as effectively or on tempo. 3.6 removal per 24 seconds is probably too much in all honesty, and it should probably be removing significantly less than that. But on the other hand, this is really the only removal option that Visari really have on the table. Next ability here is Nano Remit, and you can tell that this is supposed to go along with Nano Leech. Cooldown of 48 seconds, scales down to, I believe, 42 or 38. I've got the wiki open here because I cannot remember all the specific numbers. However, these are outdated. Yeah, it goes down, to 36 seconds at maximum level. It's got an antimatter cost of 60, which is constant, 360 hull cost going up to 480, 600 and 720, I believe, are the numbers actually. No, that can't be right. What the hell are these numbers here? 480 to 600 is what it goes up to. Yeah, so weird numbers there. I don't really know why they're like that. Antimatter restore 60, 90, 120. That actually stays constant, that increase, even though your antimatter cost is constant there. Radius of 6,600 can be upgraded with the enhanced nano emitters. So basically what this does is like the Nano Remit strips off a bunch of hull and antimatter from this ship, spreads it out, and gives it to all of the other ships in the fleet. Now, if this thing actually did what you would expect it to do, which is you lose 60 antimatter and it's 360 hull cost per ship that you're hitting, that would probably make more sense and be more fair along with what Nano Leech does, but no. This thing is actually just a pretty solid heal ability because it's on a fairly short cooldown. You can get off a couple of them pretty effectively. The 600 hull damage does not really matter at all to this thing. Being able to drop your hull is just going to get healed back up right away with the Nano Leech. So Nano Remit is fine. It's not an amazing support ability, but it's a pretty okay support ability. That's going to make it so that your opponent has a much, much harder time than they normally would. Now, Visari ships that last a little bit longer because they've had that extra spike of healing or several spikes of healing if it's like a capital ship or something like that, is a little bit better than it is for every other faction, because while you're surviving with that extra 600 hit points that you just received, you're capable of regenerating your health naturally. Whereas, let's say that Advent has something that gets an additional 1,000 hit points, that's 1,000 hit points that you just have to cheer through. If Visari get 1,000 hit points, that's 1,000 hit points plus however much hit points they've regenerated during the period while that 1,000 hit points was destroyed. So they're getting disproportionately more hit points back whenever they use an effect like Nano Remit. So it's not great, but it's okay. I do think that the Ancleon is a little bit better as a support type vessel in terms of healing up your fleet. But this is definitely a very, very good healing ability for a Titan. You can also see the obvious synergy here with Nano Leech. If you're also using Nano Leech, like Nano Remit is basically free. The next ability is Gravity Pulse. I don't love this ability. It's got a cooldown of 60 seconds and antimatter cost of 90. What it does, it decreases enemy maximum speed, increases their phase jump charge time, minus 36% going up to minus 72%, and then the phase is plus 36 up to plus 72. Duration is 24, scaling up to 48 seconds at maximum level. And the disable duration here, I believe, is 6, 12, and 18. The disable is actually obnoxiously long here, but it's not anything too crazy given the current state of the games here. You've got that like potential 45-second disable coming out of uh, the Kavarakov. If you've got three of them you're at maximum level, just chain stunning like literally the entire enemy fleet for 45 seconds is way stronger than this thing doing it for 18. Especially because you would have to have gravity pulse leveled, which I think is a little bit weak. The reason I think that gravity pulse is a little bit weak is that it's kind of overlapping with gravity warhead, which also has that sort of area effect slowdown that prevents the enemy from warping out. And I think that since you are guaranteed to have uh, an evacuator, the ability to use gravity pulse is a little bit more moot, although it is still very powerful. If you didn't have access to gravity warhead, I would actually say that gravity pulse is almost a must-take sort of ability, just because your ability to run down an enemy fleet that's trying to move reposition into a better defensive posture is really strong. Being able to do that is really strong. Being able to disable them so they just stop dead and then come into the slow so that you can catch up to them really easily, that's all very good. Now, to get the stun, you do actually have to have Nano Leech up. So no matter what ability you're doing, you do have to kind of have Nano Leech. If you're using Nano Remit, yeah, sure, you can rely on your natural healing ability, but if you want to get the best effect out of Gravity Pulse, you have to have Nano Leech. So you're going to either go Nano Leech, Gravity Pulse, or you're going to go Nano Remit and then Nano Leech. If you wanted to have all three, you'd have like that one of Nano Leech just so it triggers off the secondary abilities of these Gravity Pulse there. I don't necessarily know that that's like a build that I would want to take, because that means you're sort of just you're spreading yourself out a little bit too thin in a weird way there. Although I definitely think that you can make some use for that. The last ability here is Deceiver. It's got the same range as the other abilities, but doesn't have an enhancer that gives it more range. Cooldown of 120 seconds, anti-mag cost of 120, radius 6,600. Same as the unaugmented range for the other ones. Has a damage spike of 900, and if they're already being affected by Nano Leech, they take an additional 30 damage per second with 500 pierce for 30 seconds. It's 500 pierce for all of the damage on this. This is a great damage spike for an area of effect type of thing. It's really good for crushing lots of enemy lighter cruisers there, where this is going to reduce them by enough hit points that they'll get finished off much more easily. But unfortunately, it's not actually enough to finish off on its own any of those sort of ships there. You'll have to sort of rely on Nano Leech, but realistically what this does, it softens up all those ships enough that the rest of your fleet can wipe them out really quickly there. It's not a one-shot kill on its own. Now, against corvettes and stuff like that, Deceiver can actually one-shot those kind of ships, so very potent if you're expecting to fight against a lot of enemy corvettes or what have you. Especially in conjunction with Nano Leech, which is also doing pretty good damage against those kinds of ships there. So, let's take a look at the way that this thing interacts with tech here. I don't actually think that you care too much about the weapons on this. You do really want third generation cruise if you can get it. That's a very powerful thing for this ship because it has got really powerful synergies. Being able to start off with two abilities lets you have Nano Leech as well as something else depending on what you want to do with it. Your pulse emissions are going to help your point defense guns. That could potentially be okay, but I don't think that's the most important. You've got a lot of wave guns, but you're probably going to somewhat ignore those, so I certainly wouldn't take the wave overdrive, but you have enough that they're worth looking into and then rejecting. The reason I would reject them is because you're only getting half damage against any target that you actually want to hit there. For beams, you're only doing 80 damage per second, so it's not great. They are okay, but they're not amazing. I definitely would consider getting beam overdrive. You do enough beam damage that's a possibility, but I think there's better things to get on this thing. Missile damage is where it's at for this thing. If you're getting a bunch of missile damage, you can actually wipe out enemy craft much more quickly with this thing, assuming you're getting the extra missile launcher tacked onto this. The precise turrets are going to help this thing, as are the heavy turret servos, if you're up against a lot of enemy corvettes, which this thing's very good at fighting against. So I don't necessarily know that you need these, because your opponent should stop building those into this, but if they continue building corvettes for whatever reason and try to kill your Kultorask with a bunch of corvettes, these, I guess, could potentially be a little bit useful for that. Survival is where this is really at. The most important thing for you is actually going to be your armor points. So if you got that like full hull and armor regeneration, that gets you that full hull regeneration value there. And then you got access to the atomic lattice armor. and then also getting the speed from the flawless armor. That's all going to be really, really powerful. This thing, armor restoration, since you're capable of getting that, is also very, very strong. Getting access to the self-repairing armor blueprint, that's going to also be very strong. All of this is really good for this because what you're going to end up with is a ship that's lost its shields if you're taking a lot of focus fire, since you can't heal the shield through Nano Leech. But then you're going to be taking like chip damage to your armor, and then you're going to be healing it back faster than your opponent's actually capable of dealing that damage while you're under Nano Leech. So if you got really strong armor, you're not going to get cracked through. As far as weapons that you're capable of getting for this, you can start off with the Kultorask Hanger unlock. I don't really recommend that personally. You can also get the enhanced nano emitters. This is super powerful for this. I would say that this is the most important thing for you to get with it right away. Enhanced nano emitters doubles the range of your Nano Leech and your Nano Remit. So being able to double that radius is going to make this thing hit basically everything in a fight. No problem there. The Hull Restoration 1 and Hull Restoration 2 are going to be quite powerful for this. Now, I do want to also sort of mention here, this is another one of those ships where I would say that, similar to the other Visari, the Visari Exodus, especially with the change they've made to the economy, you're going to be able to get to Tier 5 tech as Visari Alliance typically, especially because if you're really desperate, you don't actually need, in some maps, to use your full Empire research to get the quarnium. What you can do with this faction is pretty consistently, pretty easily get to like Pirate Wager or something like that, which gives you a really awful chance to get some quarnium. The problem, of course, is that that's gambling and you're probably not going to get what you want, and it's the most rare resource to get from a pirate gamble. So I wouldn't really recommend that personally, but if you like gambling, then go right ahead and give that a shot there. Later on, you're going to get access to that phase cannon and the gravity pulse enhancer. The gravity pulse enhancer similarly just doubles the radius of gravity pulse. I don't think that's as good as the other ability, but being able to stun up the entire enemy fleet, that is very appealing in some ways. And then you got phase missile restoration, which is a bit cheaper than the phase missiles, or sorry, phase cannon. The phase missiles are very, very powerful, so I would definitely recommend getting them for this. So if I was going for a more conservative sort of build here, we're looking at a situation where we're taking Nano Leech and Nano Remit. In this case, what I would actually still say is that we want to take the phase missile launcher and the phase cannon. That's pretty much going to be an always the case sort of situation there. The nice thing about this one is that since we're not getting the gravity pulse until really, really late, we're just focusing on getting the enhanced nano emitters. Once we got that, we can sort of do all of our stuff pretty effectively there. So that's just 3. We got the 2 armor plating bonuses there. The fact that we don't have that third one does hurt. In fact, that the third one is the biggest one. If you're capable of getting that, does sting, but this is still plenty durable as far as this particular ship goes. After that, you're going to look at the self-repairing armor, and then potentially the phase attenuating shield, which I don't have the biggest attachment to for this particular ship. You could get the gravity stabilizer to make it so that this thing's capable of moving in and out of combat a little bit more effectively. You could get a resonance amplifier that's actually very good on this, and you could get an antimatter recharger. For this particular version of it, what I would probably get is the resonance amplifier, because I would probably go for focus if I was going for a Nano Remit. This makes it so that we're capable of casting Nano Remit a decent amount faster, and bringing our cooldown from 36 seconds down to like more like 28 seconds is going to make it so that this thing's capable of actually being an effective and pretty strong healer. So having that 12 minutes uptime on the phase resonance does help quite a decent amount with that. If we're looking at the next build here, we're looking at Nano Leech Gravity Pulse. The problem with this one is that we do kind of want to get the enhanced nano emitters and the gravity pulse enhancer, but we're still going to get the Kultorask phase cannon. We're still going to get the phase missile launcher. We're still going to get the armor plating 1 and 2. We're definitely going to get the self-repairing armor. This is where we get into stuff that's a little bit more up in the air. My personal sort of view, if we're going for that style of build, is that we've got an advantage with our fleet overall, and our fleet as a whole is going to be able to wipe out our enemy. We're also in a situation where we don't expect our fleet to be going up to the enemy and winning the fight with just the Kultorask. I would be expecting to have the entire fleet intimidate our opponents so much that they just have to retreat there. In those sort of instances, I don't think that funneling everything into resonance is the best call, because we are either going to be chasing our opponent down the gravity well, and we're so overwhelmingly powerful compared to them that we don't need the 12 minutes of it. They're going to flee right away, so we only need a little bit of it so that we can get through a gravity well faster. or we're in a situation where we've been fighting them for already a really long time, and we've got a lot of other ships that we're relying on because our opponent did see the Kultorask and decide to stay and fight. So they'd have to have a fairly impressive fleet to decide for that to be the case. So because of this, the last item I would do for this one is probably Antimatter Recharger. That's just because I would want that sort of spare emergency extra antimatter. In the case of using the Nano Remit Nano Leech combination, if we're up against like Advent and they're using a lot of subjugators and they're not manually casting each and every some of the one of the nullifies, then what will happen is you'll be casting Nano Remit and you're going to have all of these other ships that are flying around this thing, and all of them are going to have antimatter like at full basically because they're going to be constantly getting mana back from Nano Remit. And this is going to make it so that the Kultorask is a little bit insulated because they're not going to have their mana siphoned from all of these subjugators in the same way that they would if this ship was just sort of like using up the gravity pulse, because you sort of like have all the support ships run out of mana. This thing loses a little bit, gains it all back, but then it gets slammed by like all the nullifies all at once, loses all of its antimatter, and can't function at that point in time. This thing is actually quite fragile if it has no antimatter, so you do really want to have access to that. So with gravity pulse, this would just be if I really wanted to be able to catch up to my opponent, like they're running from every fight or what have you. I don't need Nano Remit because my opponent can't outfight me. So in that particular sense, I think that Gravity Pulse is kind of okay. The big reason I don't like Gravity Pulse is that it overlaps a lot with Gravity Warhead. There's not a huge amount of difference in the terms of the effects of it overall. And what actually is good about this is the stun. If you've got access to that like extra Nano Leech that you can pull and then the Gravity Pulse, 18-second stun, that's not nothing. That's pretty okay. Especially on a cooldown that's stuck at 60 seconds, you could really sort of like stun lock up an opponent quite badly. So I would build it primarily for that purpose, but getting that to really pay off I think is actually a little bit harder in practice than it sounds like. Yeah, for the last sort of build, we go 1-1-1. I think that this is actually really weak. I don't necessarily love that. But what this would do is it would give us a little bit of flexibility with what we're doing, but it's not a build that I would really fully recommend there. If I was going for this one, what I'd be doing is having Nano Leech just restore my antimatter primarily between uses of Nano Remit or Deceiver or Gravity Pulse. Basically making so that this thing's capable of topping itself off as much as it can. The reason I would sort of take this is if I do want to have that sort of support for my fleet overall, and I lost my Gerasol Evacuator, so I don't have the best way to secure a capture of an opponent there. In this particular case, we do still want the Gravity Pulse Enhancer and the Enhanced Nano Emitters. In fact, I want these as a combination more than I would even on the Gravity Pulse Nano Leech one. Because with that one, I feel like if my opponent's actually stuck in the Gravity Pulse or whatever, for the first time, I can get in close and I can sort of like lock up the enemy fleet and then use a second Gravity Pulse while I'm more in the middle of the opponent there. Still getting the Phase Cannon, the Phase Missile Launchers, that's still there, the Hull Plating 1 and 2, and the Self-Repairing Armor. In this particular case, I would consider getting the Resonance Amplifier, getting the faster cast on the whole roster there. Gives me a lot of sort of abilities to throw down. Now, I haven't really mentioned phase too much. I think that this thing is such a powerful caster that utility is the tree to go to for it. Combat is still very strong for it, and mobility is actually quite strong with this. This is one of those ships that just gets so much from all of the phase resonance tree that you could go any other directions and it's going to be quite powerful, and you eventually want to have like quite a lot of phase with this particular vessel, in my opinion. All of its abilities faster off cooldown become very strong. It doesn't have a lot of innate mobility by itself, so having that mobility in the tech tree through phase resonance is a big boon for it. And its guns are really good, but it doesn't have the best ability to sort of enhance or capitalize on that. So I think that this is one of those ones where you want kind of a bit of everything or quite a lot of everything. But if I had to rate them, what I would do is I would rate, first of all, utility. Then I would probably rate mobility, especially because the Solarcan Tyrant is also fairly slow. And then I would do combat in the last place. Combat is still very powerful for this, though. So if you've got a lot of other ships that rely on that power, I would definitely say that that's something that you want. this is one of those rare ships where if I was playing in a single player game and I found a copy of that item that gives you a radically boosted cooldown reduction, I would build a Kultorask even if it wasn't necessarily the best idea. Now, I mentioned this sort of in passing. You can theoretically get Pirate Wager or similar abilities to get you the quarnium you need to build this. You need a total of 4 quarnium to make this thing, which is quite a lot. And it's very difficult to actually get that from this sort of thing here. We can go ahead and we can click on this, and as you can see, I didn't get any quarnium. From what I can gather, it's about a 1 in 30-ish chance, I think, that you're going to get any quarnium at all. And you're going to get 1 or 2 of it, and you need 4. So you'd have to wait till you got 2 cycles of cooldowns for this, get the jackpot twice. On average, you're looking at like doing 50 pulls of the roulette wheel there. So it's not a great way to do this, but hypothetically, you can get a Kultorask without going to Tech 4 to get quarnium refining. So yeah, that's one thing to note about this. While it is technically possible to get this thing without getting the refineries, it's not consistent. I haven't been able to get it to be a consistent thing there at all. If it comes up in auctions, that becomes a little bit more reliable. If you know for a fact that you're going to get it from getting the tech unlocked, you could get a little bit early that way. But in general, you're still going to need refineries for this. In any event, though, that's going to be everything I know about the Kultorask Titan. What I want to mention is if you know a little bit more about this thing, I would love to know what actually is good at killing it, because from what I'm looking at here, this is probably the most powerful Titan in the game. I don't think that it's really even a fair type of ship here. It's got tremendously good firepower. It's kind of second or third best at like everything. It's not slow, so it's not like in the bottom tier for that, but it has no real mobility. That's the only category it's not really that great in. Although a lot of the Titans are not great at that. It's got really, really good chord clear. It's got a very powerful heal ability. It's got one of the only mana drains on a Titan. It's got a heal support ability. It's got a disable fleet wide. It's got really, really good guns. It's got kind of the whole package deal. Like everything about it is probably second best to third best in whatever category you want to try and make up and think about. It's behind just the like level 6 Eradicate and the Ankleon for durability, but it's close to both of them in terms of how much it can survive. It's basically just behind the Ragnarov and a really well calibrated Coronata in terms of the damage per second output. It's probably the best caster in the entire game as far as Titans go. And it's got like some of the best disabled potential out of all the Titans as well. I think that it's just really, really powerful. Oh, and it's also got like the best horde clear. It's probably the strongest at destroying like corvettes or frigates or what have you. So figuring out an effective way to actually kill this thing, I don't really know what the best way to actually defeat this is. I know that you can just sort of overmass it and overwhelm it with really, really powerful ships. If you got your own Titan, this thing's not necessarily the best at, for example, 1v1ing a Ragnarov, as long as the Ragnarov player knows to pull back all his frigates so that they're not in the fight at all, so that it can't Nano Leech them. But other than that sort of situation there, this thing just really comes out on top in a lot of situations that makes it pretty difficult to fight against. But yeah, if there's something I'm overlooking, some sort of Achilles heel to this that makes it a bit weaker in a certain situation compared to other Titans, then I would love to know what that is. I don't even think that this is particularly like more antimatter drainable than other Titans. I think it's about on par with most of them as far as that goes, because it does have very powerful abilities to restore its antimatter. A lot of other Titans run to the problem, like if you try to just drain their antimatter, they can't do anything about it, but they have the factional abilities to increase that. The Verastra is the one that really gets screwed over because it doesn't have any great ability to increase its antimatter, whereas every other faction does. This thing, I think, sort of is capable of doing it on its own. It doesn't need another ship to come around to fill its tanks up, but yeah, it overall I think is probably by far the strongest of all the Titans. But in any event, though, that's everything for today. I hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.